All right, everybody. For today's critical thought, we're going to be once again continuing our discussion into replayability in game design. Last time we spoke about loot tables. For this one, we're going to be talking about multiplayer. Now, we have spoken about multiplayer many times over on the casts and the vlogs here, and there'll probably be many more topics to come. But multiplayer is one of the most requested features of any game, any design, any platform. And chances are, whatever the game is, wherever it may be, somebody's probably asking for the developers to add a multiplayer option. And there are several big reasons why multiplayer is so popular. But the first one is very simple. Whenever you have a game built around player versus AI content, the AI is always limited. There's only so much you can do to design an AI that will challenge the player. And again, that is another topic in of itself. But most games that feature an AI is not exactly going to mimic human behavior. We're going to be getting into, Skynet and that kind of territory if we do. So typically designers will design the multiplayer, or I'm sorry, the single player versus the AI content to be asymmetrical, meaning the AI will get certain advantages or abilities that the player can't, and vice versa. This is, of course, very popular in RPGs, strategy games, anything along those lines. Again, XCOM being a really big example, or even stuff like Stellaris and Europa Universalis. The point is, no matter how well you can design an AI, it's still built on hard-coded or predefined aspects defined by the game developer. What this means is that the player, once they start to figure out how the game works, can begin to exploit this. We see this a lot in speedrunning, where high-level players will know exactly how to move or manipulate the game to trick the AI into performing a set routine or to guarantee specific outcomes. As we've talked about many times over, there is nothing that is 100% random in a video game. And when it comes to playing against an AI, it will always get to that point. Some developers will try to hide or muddy these results by making the game play completely different for the AI, or giving the AI extreme advantages at the higher difficulties. In Civilization, it's commonly known that once you get to beyond, I think, normal difficulty, I think that's Prince, the AI will get advantages like increased resources, faster research times, or maybe start with additional units. And in those cases, you're not really making the AI better, you're just stacking the deck in their favor. And this is why competitive or multiplayer design is such a popular feature. Because a human can obviously play a game a lot better against another human. This is where the idea of having different styles and how players can essentially play the game differently. Two people who play Mai in Overwatch, or Teemo in League of Legends, or pick a fighting game character can still have a different experience and different way of playing it. And that creates a lot of variance for the game. And this is why competitive games really do stand the test of time, and they are built around this long-term development and cultivating the multiplayer community. Because as long as there are people willing to play against each other, you got yourselves a game. And we can see the proof of this with the rise of esports. Evo, CSGO, League of Legends, Overwatch, you name it. There's big money and there's big recognition and allure for making these games last so long. And when they get to that point, they can become institutions onto themselves. How Street Fighter has remained relevant for such a long time. And even stuff like StarCraft and League of Legends is still going strong. And the point is, you have the multiplayer side to keep the game fresh. Because again, even if you are playing the same maps over and over again or using the same characters, how two people play it or more will vastly affect the experience. I mean, I just described the whole battle royale craze right there in a nutshell. Just take a battle and throw in 99 other people. Now, the other reason, the more, I guess, technical reason why multiplayer adds replayability has to do with a topic that we've talked about before, and that is the concept of user-generated content. If you watched our podcast with Ramin Shokazad, we talked about that in relation to MMOs, but it can certainly apply here as well. Now, user-generated content refers to the player either directly or indirectly creating content for other people to experience. Now, when we say directly, we're referring to games that allow for creating assets or options within them. So, Minecraft, the sheer number of mods in that, the workshop in Team Fortress, creating new modes or structures in, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, sorry about that, folks. But creating new modes or stories or anything in a game like Skyrim or Fallout or any Bethesda game. This is a way of you directly adding content to this game and growing it. If I create a 3-hour campaign, I just add 3 hours to this game. And it's the most direct way of expanding a title. Indirectly refers to when just being on the server or being in the game, you are creating content for someone else. So some examples of this would be a game that captures or records high scores. I mean, how many people have played score chasers like Devil Daggers, Geometry Wars, and many, many more? You could also say this about games with clans or PvP systems. If I am the #1 player in Fortnite, in Rust, Ark, you name it, that's going to put a target on my back for other people to shoot for. And that's the point. You are indirectly creating something for people to go after. And for developers, this is great. They love user-generated content like this, or user-created, because it frees them up. As we've talked about before, there is no developer or development team on this planet who can create content faster than the rate people can consume it. It's just not possible. And what sounds better to you? Spending 10 months of your life working on an expansion that people beat in a day? Or letting your fans just play against each other and you just sit back and make sure bug fixes work and maybe add a new weapon here and there? The point is that when it comes to user-generated content, it takes a massive load off of the developer's shoulders. The problem, though, is that user-generated content is extremely dependent on the community itself. And this is why multiplayer communities can basically make or break any title, and why it's so important to start off on a right foot or a strong foot. We've seen this many times over with the vast majority of MMOs, the League of Legends competitors, even something like what we may be seeing with Radical Heights and Lawbreakers, sadly. That if the community doesn't grow, it becomes a self-defeating cycle or a downward spiral effect. That without a community, people aren't going to stick around. If people don't stick around, it means nobody's going to join. If nobody's going to join, then your community is basically unsalvageable. And when that happens, it doesn't matter how great your gameplay may be, your game is dead. And there's nothing you can do about that. And that's the crux of user-created content, is that you are relying on your fan base to drive the game and not you yourself. So what happens, of course, is that if the fan base supports your game and keeps it going, you're in the money. If they don't, it's going to be very hard to keep this title alive. And it sounds, I know when I say this, it sounds dirtier than I think what I'm making it, that you're basically relying on your fans to generate you money. It's kind of a mutual beneficial partnership. The fans get a game that they love and people they can hang out with. You get the added benefit of knowing that you have community willing to support you and keep your game growing. But regardless of whether you're going to build your game on user-generated content or adding content yourself, that still means you have to continue working on the game. And that's a very important point compared to single-player titles versus multiplayer. If you want a multiplayer game to survive today, you have to be willing to commit to the long haul. We're talking months, if not years, after a game is released, that there is continued support, server maintenance, new content, making sure that any exploits or hacks are fixed, and just keeping the community interested and engaged in your title. And it is a lot of work. And why, despite what fans may say, it takes more than a weekend to create an online multiplayer architecture. But with that said, we're going to wrap things up here for today. For our next part, we're going to talk more about the big topic, and that is variance and how it impacts replayability. But to close off our video for today, can you think of games, other than the ones that I've mentioned, of course, that have survived thanks to a strong multiplayer community? Or can you think of titles that had really amazing gameplay, but still failed because they couldn't attract that audience? But thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. Be sure to check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. And let me know if you have any topics, whether they are about replayability or anything else you'd like me to cover in an upcoming video. But that's it for now. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. If you'd like to suggest games for me to cover or topics to talk about, let me know in the comments below. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on design, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the Game Wisdom Patreon, you can find us on there on patreon.com/gwblaser. $1 will get you into our private Discord channel where we talk game topics and more. $5 will get you voting privileges for any major event, including the Saturday Night Grab Bag, Patreon-funded goals, and more. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy more videos here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel. Before we get to the credits, I just want to give a quick shout out to the fans and supporters over on patreon.com/gwblaser.